Hey, I just wanted to address a couple things with in regard to California and the laws and the Constitution and everything there. This is what's going on in these states. It's might seem far-fetched because it's going on at such a level that they've already been violating their constitutions. All these, I'm talking in plural because I'm talking about states plural. But right now I'm specifically focusing on California. I'm sure there's a lot of overlap with a lot of other states with the way this goes too. So what I have here are some copy and paste from the California Constitution into a plain old text editor, and it's just basically like cherry picking some things to try and go over. I'm going to try and keep it kind of quick, but I'm known to drag things out, so it may take like 10 times longer than I want to. But as you can see, it's not like I don't have a whole lot. One of the things I'll just give, this is sort of an out of context. This is specifically towards my goal for digging in right now is towards COVID and the public health stuff surrounding it, mandates, rules and regulations. Which the rules and regulations, those are key phrases right there. That's different than legislation. It sort of has like the same push as legislation, but whether or not it's picked up, or you know what I mean, it's below legislation. I would say it's above, like, or next to a governor's executive order, maybe. Like the rules and regulations are something that's going to come from like the public health authority. They're going to set quote unquote rules and regulations. The governor's going to set executive orders. And then the legislative body is going to set actual laws. So there are three different areas there. And the governors are granted this power for reasons. It's not like, oh, they're not supposed to be dictators. We live in the United States of America, right? I haven't really gone and dug in on the federal constitution in a long time, and even then I've never really dug into it as much as I've wanted to in the past. So I won't be referring much to like anything to do with that. The California Constitution seems to abstractly sort of mirror the federal constitution. So it has like, just like we have the Bill of Rights, the California Constitution has the Declaration of Rights at the very beginning, and those seem to take precedence. They're listed at the beginning. They're sort of put there to where, in my opinion, so that they supersede everything else. And that's the deal with, for one, I'm not an attorney. I'm not like giving any real legal advice here. I'm just giving my opinion, and I'm an idiot. So that being said, but everything's a gray area. You might think whatever. I mean, if there's a hard law passed and you read that letter of the law, it's probably going to stand. If 5 zillion people have been convicted under that letter of the law, it's most definitely going to stand, right? But otherwise, it's a gray area. And it's kind of always a gray area to some degree, but it's definitely the Constitution or the legislation, whatever, can say whatever it wants, but it's the courts that ultimately make that decision. The executive branches have some power some of the time and whatever, but it's the courts that punch it into the letter of the law and really have the most power there. So that's something to keep in mind. Right here was, I started going through the actual like major body of the California Constitution, and everything, all it's doing is protecting the budget. So that's kind of ridiculous on one hand. If you really dig through it, you might find something, but I just sort of skimmed through it. And one thing I think too is that, like, if stuff is to do with protecting the budget, that that sort of shows an intent. In my opinion, I'm not a lawyer, but I would think that, maybe some good lawyer could show that in a court in the right context, right situation, that it's showing an intent. If there's something around a budget in an emergency, things like that. So there's definitely info that could be gleaned there and possibly used as some sort of weight. Right here's just something that I wanted to just bring up to show an example, and in my opinion, how this state has been overstepping their own constitution for quite a while now. It looks like since the early 1900s, 1910, 1909 was when this was added. So, Section 25, the people shall have the right to fish. Like I said, this isn't COVID right now. This is just an example about fishing to show. Have the right to fish upon and from public and from the public lands of the state and in the waters thereof. Maybe I should go like this. Excepting upon the land set aside for fish hatcheries, and no land owned by the state shall ever be sold or transferred without reserving in the people the absolute right to fish thereupon, and no law shall ever be passed making it a crime for the people to enter upon the public lands within this state for the purpose of fishing in any water containing fish that have been planted therein by the state, provided that the legislator may by statute provide for the season when the conditions under which different species of fish may be taken. I don't know. I guess I didn't see conditions the first time around, but which of course that is probably what they're writing on. But this, to me, the first thing that popped in my mind is fishing licenses. The terms for those conditions, though, you could go back to court cases and stuff and figure that one out for yourself probably, but it's basically saying that no law shall ever be passed making it a crime for the people to enter upon the public lands with this state for the purpose of fishing in any water containing fish. So any state lands, they can't make it a crime to enter onto that land with the intent to fish. And so if you're next to a river and you have a fishing pole out, even if it's not in the water, you will get fined hundreds and hundreds of dollars, bare minimum 99% chance if you are caught like that. So as in California, that's where I grew up. I'm now in Oregon, so I left that state. That's one of a zillion things that I think is ridiculous about that state. And yeah, so for them to do that, if there's any constitutionality to it, it's like they to enter upon the public lands, they must be like really exaggerating that, like, oh, you know, you can enter the land but you're not allowed to take out a pole or something. Like, I don't see how that could supersede over the very Declaration of Rights at the very top beginning of the California Constitution, and then the conditions. It's like that's such a vague terminology right there, where it's like provided for the season, which is understandable, and the different species. But the conditions, like a fishing license, to my knowledge, doesn't have any specification. You don't even have to like take a class. You just go pay a fee to get it. I'm guessing it's like $40, or now it's probably more or something. But so anyway, that's just one example of how Californians are just being taken advantage of, in my opinion. You know, if you don't pay that 40 or 50 or whatever dollar fee it is, you're going to get charged 400 or 500 or more dollars for fishing, for trying to survive, you know. So that's just one ridiculous thing. But anyway, I'll move on. I'll go to the COVID stuff. And none of this is definite, you know what I mean? This is just like, I literally just extracted this stuff like 20 minutes ago or whatever. Section 1. All the people are by nature free, and of course the United States Constitution even takes precedence over this. But anyway, all the people are by nature free and independent and have inalienable rights. Among these are enjoying and defending life and liberty, acquiring, possessing, and protecting property, and pursuing and obtaining safety, happiness, and privacy, which is what we expect, right? So one of the things I think is kind of specific to the COVID is this stuff right here, acquiring, possessing, and protecting property. Like I said, I'm an idiot, and I'm sure you've already figured that out by the way that I'm talking about some of this stuff. But acquiring and possessing and protecting property, I don't just think of as real estate type of property, but also as a toothbrush or food or whatever types of things that can be quote unquote stolen from you. So I think that, you know, this is like setting a precedent there, saying that, you know, you have the right to go to a store and buy stuff. You know, that's what I would think. So I just want to put that out there. Section 2, every person may freely speak and write and publish his or her sentiments on all subjects, being responsible for the abuse of this right. The law may not restrain or abridge liberty of speech or press, which of course we're protected by in the United States Constitution as well. Screw all you companies out of Silicon Valley that are violating the crap out of this. And You know, that's just to say, hey, don't worry about what you say. I mean, obviously, in this day and age, we do have to worry because the commies are trying to take over, of which I thought that I was loosely into the idea of that style of government, and now I'm never could be more against it. I can't believe how ridiculous it is, and especially what fashion they're trying to bring it in right now. But as long as we do have these constitutions, we have the right to speak freely and do like what I'm doing right now. Even if you don't know what the hell you're talking about, you got the right to say it. You know what I mean? Somebody can frame that up and say, hey, you know what? This guy's an idiot. And I welcome people to say that about me. Question everything that I say. Don't take anything I say as absolute truth. But nobody has the right to go and delete your stuff off of social media or any of that crap. You know what I mean? Those things grew out of the United States. They grew out of California. You know what I mean? And now they think they can turn around and go China on you, you know? Like, forget that. That is so fucking ridiculous. People need to step up. And I don't mean in a violent way. Obviously, there's a ton of goons doing that crap right now. I don't mean in any sort of belligerent way. I mean in an assertive, the way that a lot of conservatives have been doing it. For the most part, most conservatives in the public eye have been doing an extremely good job. They just clown the liberals of the past. So anyway, Section 3, the people have the right to instruct their representatives, petition government for the redress of grievances, and assemble freely to consult for the common good. Right there, and assemble freely for the consult of the common good. Obviously, we know that all of these BLM, which is an organization, a political organization, it's not about making things better for black people. It's about pumping money into the Democratic Party and pumping money into a Marxist organization. I said it. It's the truth. Don't take my word for it. Look it up. Hear it out of the founders' mouths themselves. Follow the money trail. It's publicly available for the most part. There's a lot of it hidden too, but what you can see on the surface backs exactly what I just said. So they have been promoted to have the right to assemble freely to consult the common good, even though a lot of them aren't doing it peaceably. But there is a large minority of people, I just want to say, that were doing it peaceably in the beginning. You know what I mean? When I saw George Floyd, when I saw that tape, I got heated. I got pumped. My heart was beating 100 miles an hour, right? And I knew that that was going to lead to this kind of crap. But the thing is, you got to think it out, you know what I mean? And that's what they don't want. They don't want us to come together and think of real solutions. They want us to polarize and jump on different ships and different echo chambers and ridiculous crap like that, because they know with unity, you know, when it's no longer about party lines and stuff like that, which, hey, if you're anywhere in the real world, you'll know that Trump is straddling those party lines and straddling out of them, you know. So if you think that guy's whatever, you know, yeah, we could say whatever we want about anybody, especially in politics, but I'll tell you what, if you're buying up the story on that guy, you need to pull your head out of your ass and really look at what's going on. You know what I mean? And a lot of those people, especially like Trump, have a tendency to highlight, it's like the Dunning-Kruger effect, to highlight where they screw up, you know, and try and make excuses about that or do dumb things and, you know, talk in circles like I do and stuff. But then the things that they're really good at, like negotiating mass historical peace deals, brokering historic oil deals like that are unprecedented in this country, you know, and even globally to some degree. And they just let those things go by because it's like, oh, that was easy. That's the least I could do, right? Well, guess what? That's the important stuff that you need to look at, and CNN ain't going to tell you that. Fox might hint on it on a good day, you know, if they were getting paid off or whatever, but the whole media thing, it just like Trump says, he calls it fake news, you know what I mean? That's really the truth. There's a little bit of truth in there in the news every once in a while so that you'll keep buying it up and keep brainwashing yourself against it, but that shit is bullshit. So wake the fuck up. A statute. What was this? This was instruct the representatives, petition the government for redress, assemble freely. And that goes for churches too. You know what I mean? The common good, assemble to consult for the common good. If you're not discriminating and saying, you know, no, this group can't be here or whatever. Like if your church is, quote unquote, church is open doors to all people, it's common, then that's good. And freaking, you know, I don't see any reason why they should be able to discriminate against that. You know, they can make recommendations or whatever. I'll get a little bit more into that in a second. A statute court rule, or other authority, including those in effect on the effective date of this subdivision, this is sort of jumping ahead here, you can see it section 2, shall be broadly construed if it furthers the people's right of access, or narrowly construed if it limits the right of access. A statute, court rule, or other authority adopted after the effective date of this subdivision that limits the right of access shall be adopted with findings demonstrating the interest protected by the limitation and the need for protecting that interest. So that's saying, I don't really want to say too much about that because I think I'll say something stupid that, it kind of speaks for itself, but I'd encourage you to reread that several times. That's basically saying, hey, things need to be scoped, and if things are going to be limited, they need to be like specifically they need to specifically demonstrate why those things are limited. You know what I mean? Right now on all of these hearings federally everywhere, I hear so much about like, oh, a Bloomberg article says this, or Washington Post says that, or the New York Times says this on the freaking Senate committees and stuff. And it's like, are you fucking kidding me? I don't give a shit what some journalistic article said. You know what I mean? That's cool if you read it and it kicked off something in your mind and made you go do further investigation. But what have we come to? I mean, everybody on both sides of the aisle are doing that. It's fucking retarded and it needs to stop. So, Section 4, free exercise and enjoyment of religion without discrimination or preference are guaranteed. This liberty of conscience does not, I'm pretty sure that's conscience, right? Or conscience. I like etymologies and breaking words apart, because that's probably where it derived from. But of conscience does not excuse the acts that are licentious or inconsistent with the peace or safety of the state. The legislators shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. A person is not incompetent to be a witness or juror because of his or her opinions on religious beliefs. That matters more and more every single day right there, and that's the thing that they're going to use against people. So hang on to that one with everything you got, that you cannot be judged against that. And watch out what you say about Muslim people, because we know that the true Muslims are here to flip this country on its head. Sorry, that's what the book says. So either you believe your book or you don't. Either you're a fake ass, like a lot of these religious people that even call themselves Christians, or you're not. You're down for your brown. You're down for your book. So if you're really down for your book, you're here to cause trouble. But we still can't discriminate against you, right? We still can't do any of that. We still need to uphold your right as a Muslim to practice your religion, as long as it's not harming people. You know what I mean? You can go talk shit on us. You can go say, hey, we want to kill you. You can do all that. But as soon as you start taking actions towards that, fuck that. Then we can stop it, because it doesn't have to be based on religion. It's based on your actions. You know what I mean? It's like judge people on what they do, not on what they say. So say whatever you want. Watch what you do. And that goes for all of us. And they cannot make any law respecting an establishment of religion, And right there, that's something this whole country screwed up with marriage, And that was a moral thing to promote people getting together and raising happy, healthy families, which is cool, and I'm all about that too. But the thing is the country wasn't doing that because that's cool and they're all about it. They were doing that because they wanted to have a good war machine for the past 200 or so years, and that's how you get that. That's how you get that happy, healthy country that's going to be ready to defend themselves and all that. You build up that state religion style vibe, and that's why they step in and have tax breaks for marriages and all these rulings about how marriage should be and whatnot. That marriage is a religious thing. Who's to say you can't marry 10 people? Who's to say you're allowed to marry one? Who's to say what marriage is? We all know that's defined by a religious moral that people have, whether they invent it for themselves or whatever. A lot of people tend to get it from like the Bible or something. The state's not supposed to have a hand in that, period. Marriage licenses, marriage, none of that. That's ridiculous. So there's a little bit of food for thought. Section, thanks for hanging in there if you still are with me yelling in your ear. Section 5, the military is subordinate to civil power. I feel like this is an important thing to bring up, because right now the police, that's one thing where I tell people resist, because a lot of the police are on our side. they don't want to see the country going where it's going. You know what I mean? I think we're seeing a lot of rational behavior by the police, especially in a time of extreme distress where it's like, wow, can you imagine being a police officer, especially in one of those big cities where the shit's hitting the fan? It's like, give me a fucking break. But anyway, since they are more on the citizen side a lot of times, these governors may turn to their national guards or stuff like that as just a possibility in the future. So it's important to remember that that military is subordinate to its civil power. A standing army may not be maintained in peacetime. Soldiers may not be quartered in any house in wartime except as prescribed by law, or in peacetime without the owner's consent. So if they try and overstep those boundaries, you gotta call them out. Don't back down, or else you're gonna lose everything. Section 7, a person may not be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Due process of law is not a governor talking on the news. It's not a governor re-upping some ancient mandate based on random ass models from China and from Italy, the axis of evil in the world wars. Give me a break. China, Chairman Mao, like, really? This is due process of law, and the only place the law comes from, like I said, is the courts. Period. End of story. So they're not allowed to deprive you of your life or your freedom without it going through the courts. These stores that are forced to shut down for more than, a very small amount of time, in Oregon, it's a month, 30 days. That's it. Then they can't do, mask mandates the next 30 days and, expand the mask mandates after that. That's not allowed. They have to send that to the legislature. The reason these governors have so much power initially is so that they can come in when the chaos is there and throw some rules out there, throw some mandates out there. But the legislator, the due process of law, is what they're trying to help out, is they're supposed to be handling stuff for a minute until that due process steps in. And if that due process doesn't step in, sorry, your 15 minutes of fame are up, Newsom. So Section 8, a person may not be disqualified from entering or pursuing a business, profession, vocation, or employment because of sex, race, creed, color, or national or ethnic origin. I'll just leave that one as it stands. It doesn't necessarily directly apply right now, but it's just there, and I wanted to say it. It feels good. So Section 9, a bill of attainder, which is basically, I think that's like stripping somebody who's like accused of treason and is going to get the death penalty. It's like stripping and smearing them or taking their rights from them. Ex post facto law is an after the fact law that's passed after the fact. I don't know exactly. You'd want to look that word up against like precedent setting cases to get a good idea on that. So a bill of attainder, ex post facto law, or law impairing the obligation of contracts may not be passed. So that could apply. A bill of attainder, would I just copy the same thing? Looks like I wanted to copy the next paragraph, Section 10. So if you go into the Declaration of Rights, the very beginning of the California Constitution in Section 10, whatever that was, Section 12, a person shall be released on bail by sufficient sureties except for capital crimes when the facts are evident of the presumption or the presumption great, felony offenses, What this basically, I think the reason I copied this one in is because of like tort style offenses. Maybe that's what 10 was more about. It's looking like, because I'm not seeing it down here, is that they're not allowed to basically set unreasonable bails and stuff like that. And if it's to do with a tort, let me see here. If I go DuckDuckGo and then go to California Declaration of Rights. I want to see what 10 is. It's obviously somewhat important if I... Witnesses may not be unreasonably detained. A person may not be imprisoned in a civil action for debt or tort or in peacetime for a militia fine. So a tort's basically like a non-felony. It's anything that can be handled in a civil court, a non-criminal charge. So this is something that comes down to like people who are vaccine hesitant or, done with the mask mandates, things like that. If it's not straight up criminal, and tort can even cause damages, I think even like, it can even overlap into things that could possibly cause physical damages. It depends on what the charges are. But if it's not a criminal charge for sure, then it's basically a tort. So if you're not wearing a mask, there's no law. That's the one thing without the legislation there's no law to make for it to be a criminal charge. There has to be a law, to my knowledge. Like, I don't think they can possibly do a criminal charge without LAW law. Not a rule, not a regulation, none of that kind of stuff. That would all fall under torts. So you may not be imprisoned in a civil action for debt or tort. Witnesses may not be... Yeah, it says the thing about witnesses, and then it says period. And then it says a person may not be detained for that, comma, or in peacetime for a militia fine. So this right here, in my opinion, and the thing that sucks is you're not going to get the ACLU to back you probably on any of this crap because they are so hard left right now, it's not even funny. They won't even contact you back for like stuff. And I've tried already in recent times, and it's like they claim that they try and get back to everybody, and I filled up all their boxes on their website and tried to do my best, and they didn't even contact me to say fuck you. That's how they are. So it would come down to like more independent lawyers that would be the ones to pick this kind of stuff up. But a person may not be imprisoned in a civil action for debt or tort. So just keep that in mind. If you get fined for not wearing a mask or for having a gathering or whatever, all that bullshit, which violates rights of privacy for one thing, and the liberties that are supposed to be backed by due process, I would say fight it, try and get your shit together and fight that in court, and even if that judge shoots you down and hits you with a $300 fine or whatever they do, appeal that decision, do what you got to do. But right here it's saying that you cannot be imprisoned for that. So of course they play by their own rules, but these are supposed to be their own rules right here. So then there's that stuff. A person may be released on their own recognizance in the court's discretion. Excessive bail may not be required. In fixing the amount of bail, the court shall take into consideration the seriousness of the offense charge, the previous criminal record of the defendant, and the probability of his or her appearing at the trial or hearing of the case. So that's right there. This is the letter of the California Constitution. This is the supreme law of the state right here. This is the top of the supreme law of the state. So all that other crap they try and do, it all has to bounce off of this. And they're going to get away with it for as long as they can until somebody fights it. And if you look up these cases, look up these sections and what they were used, right here you can see like when it was added or whatever. But it's all about those precedent-setting cases. And especially if there's not a case that ever set precedents on it, that means it's a hardcore gray area. And that means that, if you can get into the right court with the right jury and the right judge, that gavel might fall in your direction, which would be ideally in the common goods direction, right? So that's one thing, is like by sticking your neck out a little bit, by not wearing a mask, and, if you're in a store, say, hey, call the police. They might be able to arrest you on something different. They might arrest you on a different charge, obviously, or they might just let you go and not charge you, and you go through that whole hassle or whatever. But if you can get charged with something, it's like the guy Kyle Rittenhouse. I haven't followed that really closely lately, but I did look into it. And if he gets charged with first-degree murder, short of a corrupt judge and jury, that dude's getting off. If you watch the footage, if you if you're somebody who's sitting there blabbing thinking that guy is a murderer, then you haven't seen the fucking footage. I'll tell you that. You haven't seen the fucking footage. Because I'm against guns and I'm against shooting people. I read the Bible. The Bible says turn the other cheek if somebody smites you, and that's what I would like to say is the right thing to do. But we live in America. We have the supreme law of the land, the Constitution, and it says the right to bear arms and to protect yourself and your person, just like a lot of these constitutions say inside of them too. And that's the deal. You know what I mean? That dude was getting kicked. Everybody who he shot was assaulting him, period. You know what I mean? You're going to assault a guy with an AR? Watch the clips. Next time anybody who thinks about assaulting a person with an assault rifle or a handgun or a black belt or whatever, or a pissed off look on their face, which he didn't even have. That dude was there to help people. But anyway, I'll leave it at that. So if the charge doesn't fit the crime, then you're going to get off. Basically, you're going to have a lot of room to get off there. So, and if you can start bringing up this constitutionality stuff, then you got the possibilities of appeals and stuff. And I think this is what it's going to take. You know what I mean? I imagine this is what it's going to take. So, Section 13, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable seizures and searches may not be violated. So in all the other parts of this Constitution and all the other random legislation, even legislation out there that says that, that they can take you in and take whatever samples necessary for, because with the epidemic stuff, the public health emergencies, that's where they got us cornered. That's where the whole fucking Constitution and everything goes straight out the window. Or it appears so, right? But it doesn't, because the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and this stuff right here is at the top of that Constitution. Not sorry that I keep saying that. I think it's important to stay focused on that. And you see right here, it says the right of people to be secure in their persons. You know what I mean? And searches may not be violated. Searches and seizures, unreasonable. Here's where we get the courts again. A warrant may not be issued except in probable cause. So it comes back to a warrant for search and seizures. So they cannot search your person. You know what I mean? If a COVID test is searching your person, a drug test is searching your person, anything like that is searching your freaking person. You know what I mean? Like, give me a break. If a cop anybody sticks a glove on their hand and sticks their finger up your ass, is that not search? So what's the difference from sticking a wire up your nostril all the way to the back of your throat under your eyeballs? You know what I mean? That's just a whole compliance thing to get people to get used to, like, oh, here, let us shove this RFID up in your forehead, or something stupid like that. And I don't even feel the least bit crazy for saying shit like that, because it's like, give me a fucking break. And then when they come out with a non-invasive thing, it gets shot down. Like, oh, really? You got to go straight to the back of the throat for this fucking mucus? I'm not allowed to blow my nose for it? You got to stick the fucking wire up there? Fuck off. Section 17, cruel and unusual punishment may not be inflicted or excessive fines imposed. If you go back, there's a vaccine hesitancy person from the early 1900s. I want to say 1910 or something. It was one of those early, it was so early I didn't even realize they had vaccines yet. And the person was opposed to it because they claimed that them, and I think maybe their kid or something, had adverse reactions to a vaccine. Big surprise, right? Which, depending on which side of the aisle you're reading the story from, one side says, like, oh, it's a joke to even, like, the two things you can never question this day and age are climate change and vaccine efficacy. And it's like, bullshit. I'm not saying climate change ain't real, but I'm saying that Green New Deal, you can fucking shove that up your ass, because that's a bunch of bullshit. We don't need FDR all over again. And vaccine hesitancy, obviously you're just reading that corrupted Wikipedia page. If you dig in on the real shit on that, you'll know that there has never been any proof that any vaccine is safe or effective, period. Sounds crazy, I know, because you're indoctrinated, but that is the truth. No vaccine has ever been proven safe or effective. And they even had a committee to determine it, and that committee said it would probably need a more focused subcommittee to make that determination. In a nutshell, that's what it said. So, but anyway, I got a little bit on a rant. Big surprise, right? But excessive fines imposed. I did the math on the fine. So what they did was they said that was a precedent-setting case, and they said that those people, quote unquote, had to take the vaccine, even though they had adverse effects and they were against it for other reasons as well. So all that boils down with all this other piles of public health crap that they can theoretically force a vaccine on us, right? But we can still turn that down. You know what I mean? That's not criminal to turn that down, but you will get hit with a civil charge about it. So you will be fined. That fine cannot be excessive. These hundreds of dollars that some places are charging for not wearing a mask is excessive, you know, and it's not demonstrated like it said earlier in this text. I think it was with inflation. Don't quote me on it. Look that up for yourself. I think it was a $150 fine on those people back then with inflation, adjusted for inflation today. So roughly $150, anything of that beyond that, and that was federal. I believe that was appealed to the Supreme Court. I want to say it was out of Boston or Rhode Island, somewhere in the Northeast over there. And it was appealed all the way to the Supreme Court. And that was the fine levied against them. So if people are charging more than 152, you know, even $200 could be excessive, because that precedence, that federally precedented case, anything above and beyond that, they better have some extreme justification. How are they going to justify charging more? You know what I mean? Like, that's ridiculous. So if you're getting charged more than 150 bucks for wearing that mask, not wearing that mask, that's bullshit. And you cannot be jailed for it. Of course, they'll threaten people with a maximum deal with jail. That's bullshit. It's in violation of all of this, you know, and it's also backed by the federal Constitution. I know enough about that, but like I said, I'm not well versed on it right now, so that'll be some other rant. Section 18, treason against the state, consists only of levying war against it. Right there, I went ahead and threw this one in because of the rioters. You know what I mean? That's straight up treason. I'm all about peaceful protesting, and a lot of people are. Even a lot of police are. Even there's police that will protect your right to protest against them, and even to say defund them, even though they obviously don't want that, but they will protect your right and treat you fairly doing that. But that's why they sent in the, you know, the few bad apples in here to fucking throw the Molotov cocktails and all that fucking bullshit, was because they want to polarize people. They want to make it so that that good cop that wanted to put their life out on the limb has to go, you know what? I got a kid that I'm trying to see go through college or whatever. I can't put up with this shit. And they got to go. And all those good cops got to check out. You know what I mean? Not all of them, but it's ate up is what it is. It's totally fucking ate up. And I just, anybody who, that's where it's like, you know what? There's a lot that needs to be revised with the police system, obviously. Anybody who doesn't think that's lying to themselves just as much as a BLM or Antifa protester is, in my opinion. The truth's in the middle. You know what I mean? There's two sides of the story, and the truth's in the middle. And that's the thing. And allowing yourself to be polarized to either side is losing. You know what I mean? If you're out there with that drone chant, Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, it doesn't sound like you really care about black lives. You know what I mean? Why can't you say black people are important? Why can't you just shut up and go do an action to make that happen, to be inclusive to all people? You know, it's because you're a drone, you're programmed, and you're out there regardless. You don't even know what you're out there for anymore. You're just going off the next person with their little echo chamber system. And the same thing on the other side, where now those people are like, all lives matter, all lives matter. It's like, yeah, of course all lives matter, right? Just like Black Lives Matter. But you know what? Now it's all the way back to the whole flip side. You look up the memes and everything, and it's like, we've lost the whole chance of like any justice for people. And so now everybody's just over on their own islands, just vibrating in chaos, and it's just fucking ridiculous. People need to unite. Like this whole system of privilege transcends way beyond skin color, you know? Yeah, maybe if you line people up, there'd probably be more white people with privilege at some given moment, because guess what? There's mostly white people in the United States. So that's something that happens. And when you see things like the crime rates that supposedly that black people make up, 30% of the population, are responsible for half the crime, I don't blame that. That's not a racist something. That's not because of their race. It's not because they're black. necessarily that that's happening. It's because that most of the black people, a lot of the black people came from an oppressive situation. They came from 50 years of slavery at least, right? But I'm just going to say that just in case somebody wants to, argue whatever direction about it, but at least 50 years of slavery followed by at least 100 years of oppression. Like on the books, no matter how far you try and round it down, you got 150 years of bullshit against a lot of black people in this country. And that let them, they weren't even allowed to have property and all sorts of rights for so long that it's not like in the middle of the 1800s all of a sudden black people were just on par with white people and they should have stepped up or something, and a lot of people did, but there's a whole deal that needs to go on there. I think there is some reparations that need to happen, but it's not white people getting down on a knee. It's not random white people handing $10 to random black people. It's not like that. It's going back and saying, hey, just for instance, how much money did we make as a country on the backs of these slaves? How much did those businesses make using those people as industrial farm equipment, treating them like animals? What was a reasonable minimum wage that those people would have got paid? Start crunching the numbers on that, and then maybe look at reparations into that and funnel a lot of that money to, even before you finish calculating the numbers, start funneling the money in those schools, things like that. Start getting the families back together, doing things to promote that type of stuff. This government can do it. You know what I mean? It'd be easy. You pile up a big old pile of reparation money and freaking, and that's just a dumb 5-minute answer right there. Like if we really united and thought about this, then we could do all sorts of things for all sorts of cultures. Because there's tons of people like myself, look, you obviously see a taste of my attitude. This is just me on politics. You know what I mean? When I'm doing professional work, I'm very professional. I'm like uber professional. But yet I struggle like crazy to find work in my field because people sense that, I'm not whatever, gonna lock in with that flow and be that fucking wage slave, which I will do for whatever given amount of time. But, once the grass is greener, I obviously move on and I try and do so on good terms, just like a lot of people do. But, I've never held a job for a year in my life. I would say I've never been fired. I've been let go a couple times, but of course there's two sides to that story, right? But I've had a ton of jobs. And I would say that the vast majority of people that I've worked for would say that I'm one of their best employees they've ever had. That's what I would think. But anyway, that's a whole nother thing. But anyway, that's straight up fucking treason right there. What's going on? So this is a joke that this is happening like this. If one person would have done some of this stuff, they'd been like, whoa, that's a lone wolf terrorist, and they would have hung him out to dry. But now they got all these drones doing it. And the reason that these Democratic governors and people let this happen is because if you look at the money, follow the money on anything, right? Follow it on the pharmaceuticals. Why do you think Pfizer's up talking about the people who don't take the vaccines are the weak link that are going to spread this disease? That's fucking Pfizer. It's in their best interest to pump everybody full of vaccines, regardless of how healthy it is. If they could pump you full of shit water, they'd do it just because it's going to increase their bottom line. You know what I mean? So we got to watch it. Who's saying what? BLM is pumping money in the Democrats' pockets. They're pumping money through Act Blue charities into the Democrats' pockets, and that's why they're out there painting BLM, Black Lives Matter in front of Trump Tower before it even gets approved through the proper procedures. You know what I mean? They're already doing that. It's like, oh, really? You can't wait a day? You can't even expedite that shit? And they're doing that in front of Trump Tower, who Trump was a Democrat for like 10 years or something, at least. Every black Democrat you've ever heard of had his back until he became a Republican. You know what I mean? They all loved him. You can look up the pictures. Look up Trump and black people on the internet and tell me you can find an end to that. You know what I mean? Tell me you can find some racism there. These quotes, remember Lauryn Hill, how they said that she said some racist quotes? One DJ said that? And remember, you probably still believe that's true. It's not. And it's the same thing with Trump. They said that, oh, he said there's good people on both sides. Bullshit. Joe Biden said that. All these things the Democrats accuse people of, look in their own fucking records. 100%, not 99.999%, 100% of the time, that exact Democrat is guilty of what they're accusing the person of. Joe Biden said there are good people on both sides, and he was specifically referring to white supremacists. Donald Trump did not say that, and then he even clarified in that same exact press conference. They asked him, a journalist asked him to clarify, and he did, and he said, I'm absolutely not talking about those people. So if you believe that shit, you haven't even done one scrap of your homework. One scrap. You're pathetic. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you that. Wake up. Find something real and I'll believe it. You know what I mean? I'll blast it. I'll put it on blast with everything else. But until then, that's the truth. Section 20, treason, or I just read that one, right? There's the fishing thing, and the provisions of this Constitution are mandatory and prohibitory unless by express words they are declared to be otherwise. So that means this shit stands. It's mandatory, and it's prohibiting unless otherwise, if it's leaning one way or the other, it's leaning hard those ways. Just like what we went over, unless within that wording itself, and the California Constitution's very good about that, like right here, as used in this paragraph, emergency means, and then they go on to describe it. So they are pretty detailed. This thing's been amended over the years and stuff. So anyway, stand up for your rights. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort. You might be surprised. You don't have to go out and be belligerent. I would say don't be belligerent whatsoever. We go shop at our local grocery store, and we have to walk right past a mask required sign. Like, we have to walk around it. And when we're in there, we're the only ones without the mask on. We still practice distancing. We still, do other things. I don't want to get into every little thing we do, but there is still a lot of things that we consciously do. You know what I mean? I take a shower before I even go to the store. 99% of the time. Like, I take a shower 5 minutes before I go to the store. Like, stuff like that. I spray antibacterial zinc spray in my mouth. You know what I mean? Whatever. I'm not saying that's going to stop anything or whatever, but I have to imagine it probably at least reduces it, and a hell of a lot better than those masks do. Because the coronavirus particle, the median size of it is 0.1 microns. If you don't know how big a micron is, it's pretty fucking small. Too small to see with the naked eye, right? The smoke, right now, there's a lot of fires going on. The smoke particles, depending on who you're talking to, they're like, a half a micron to a micron in size, plus or minus with all of this stuff, but that's where they're at. So even if you say they're a half micron in size, that smoke, right? A good surgical mask is going to filter 0.5. It's going to filter a half micron. So put on that good surgical mask, not your stupid put on your bandana. And check that out, for one thing. That everybody's wearing a bandana, might as well be wearing nothing, unless you're a spit talker like me and you're not conscious about it when you're around other people, keeping your distance or something. That bandana ain't doing shit. If you look at the graphs, the scientific graphs for that shit, it is just the most slightest adjustment between not wearing a mask at all and wearing a bandana. And then once you get down, the cloth ones, the cloth masks are also a joke. Those aren't filtering a half micron, you know what I mean? But you get down to the FDA approved stuff, that is roughly the size of this smoke. And you can see how much smoke can go in and out of it still. There's at least a little bit and tons out the sides. And then when you get to something like the coronavirus, you're talking 5 to 10 times smaller than that. So at least 5 times smaller than that. And that's a joke. So I'm not out there virtue signaling. I wore a mask for 30 days. Even though it was after our governor's time, this is that whole thing of like 4 months into a pandemic. It's kind of like saying that at a baby shower you should wear a condom, Like, it's like, whoa, that's way too little, way too late, right? To say that all of a sudden these masks are required, but it's just them doing their power grabs. It's just them working towards that fucking mark of the beast. Whether or not you believe the Bible or not, these people are here to fulfill that book. And obviously, you know what I mean? But, yeah, it's just ridiculous. I wore the mask for the 30 days. I was like, you know what? I'll do this. It's the middle of summer, whatever. I'll put this damn mask on when I go to the store, but I made sure to make a political exercise out of it every time I did. I painted one that looked like Hannibal Lecter. I painted one that looked like a gas mask. I painted one with 666 across the front of it. You know, I wore it, and one of the times with the gas mask one, I stuck some audio in my pocket of like bomb sirens and shit going off and played that, cranked that up going to the store. Because it's like, hey, you know, you might get me in your monkey suit, but I'm going to be a monkey about it a little bit. You know, I'm gonna give my 2 cents. I'm not just gonna wear this and fucking bow over, like, period, because I know what the real shit is. You know, this is Nazi tactics, literally. This is fascist tactics. It's all those, when you look at like Mussolini, Hitler, Stalin, those people. And the scary thing is right now, I'm about to shut up, but I see all you people out there who were like trying to point the finger at Trump and trying to point all those fingers until I had you on every little thing you try and bring up. And now you're telling me how good Hitler was and all that. I'm like, yep. And I've seen all you drop off the social networks and all that ever since these riots have been going on. Yep, I see all you motherfuckers disappearing. I've known your true colors too. I've been seeing your shit and I've been fucking knowing what the fuck's up this whole time, and now I know for sure. But anyway, thanks a lot for listening. Stand up for your rights. All glory and praise to Yahweh Yeshua.